Yep.
I'm going to call to order the May 7th, 2025 Budget Subcommittee meeting. Thank you for everybody being here. We will start off with grants and gifts.
All right, thank you, Chair. Nothing for grants and gifts to report.
Eliminating general.
Moving on to audits and reports.
In other words,
Audits and reports. All right, I'll start with,
we were eliminating generally because it was aimed at,
let's see, athletics items. So from last meeting, there was some athletic items.
That's better.
That's better. Okay. Might have got hit.
Any questions from the committee?
So I'll just summarize for the recording here. So in terms of year-end reporting projections for this year, we're still looking to close the year, looking to.
You said it's super staticky.
Super staticky.
Still?
Yeah.
Okay.
Right now.
And change the speaker. Echo canceling. It's the right speaker.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, we'll continue. If it's still super static, I apologize. Try to speak through it.
Is that one off balance though? That might be, yeah, pull it to it. Perfect.
All right.
That's better.
Look at that. Thank you, Alyssa. So much like balancing next year's budget, we also have to balance this year's budget in terms of our year end. And again, a goal for sustainability in our school department budget is to build up our reserve funds, which have been completely depleted since the pandemic. All right. Thank you for that. All right, on to modular classrooms. I'll share the screen here. We went to council on Monday night with the chief of staff to get additional funding for the modulars, really funding for site work, for the utilities going out, fiber, just all that work that has to be put in place before the modules are dropped in. And so let me share my screen here. Becca, you can see that all right?
Yes.
Okay. So Monday night, we went and there was a free cash measure for modulars It was $500,000 in addition to the funding we already have. So for those who didn't see the meeting or go to the meeting, the $500,000 was approved, supported, and approved. And so that brings our total funding up to 4.47 million. So we had an original measure for $800,000. That was measure 24067. And then opera funding was appropriated totaling 222,000. And then more recently measured 24115 in the amount of 2.9 million was appropriated. In addition to that, for site work funding, 500,000. So the funding total available is 4.472 million. And as of right now, the projected cost of the project is 4.3 million. So there's like a 4% contingency there. 3.8 million of it was what the bid came in at for the 7 modulars. And then, like I mentioned, we added $500,000 for site work. So that was the funding. Also on Monday night, questions were asked about the programming of the spaces. So again, 7 modulars being built right now, site work being done, working with the principals. They're talking with staff. They've identified, who's going, who's packing, who's shifting within the building. And so I just want to talk through what the modules be used for, and then just show on the screen an aerial. Nothing exists through the project docs, as beautiful and elaborate as if I created here. But a lot of the project docs are CAD drawings, schematics, systems, utilities. You can get that out of there. No one panic that that's a real. And so I just created, anticipation this meeting, talked with Daniel this week, just created these just to give people an idea where they're going. Okay, so Hamilton and Nash are pretty straightforward. We'll talk through them here. So Hamilton's getting 3. They're adding a 5th grade next year. So they're going from 2 to 3 5th grade next year. So all 3 5th grades go into the modulars. It frees up space within the building. Ashley's adding an additional section, CEP, and then LBLC group could utilize some additional space. So it makes perfect sense. 5th grade being added moves out, so you have 3 5th grades out here. So the modulars, if you're looking at Hamilton School, the modulars come here, and then they'll be right here is how they access the building. This right here is the expanded fire lane. So currently the fire lane's here. We'll expand out here. This is a rough drawing of it. I'm not the fire department. They will do the actual measurements and then here a nice added bonus was we were able to. This was an old asphalt and courts, and there's been a request for years to remove that and make it into green space. So we were able to work with the DPW and remove that asphalt. I think Jeremy remembers this request. And so, some loam and seed, that'll become some green space in the future.
Can I just clarify? CEP and the LBLC is not going in the modulars.
Thank you.
It's freeing the space up in the building for 5th grade to go in the modulars.
Thank you for clarifying. So 2 classrooms existing in Hamilton that are 5th grade will move out to the modulars. As Daniel said, that frees up space for special ed. And then the 3rd space is for the new 3rd, 5th grade that will be added next year.
Does that impact their bus route at all? Do they? No, they don't go around the building, right? They go around the front.
They go around the front.
Okay. And the parents do. The parents go around.
Yeah, so the principals, part of the conversations last year was making sure operationally what we're proposing works for them. So Ashley's looked at this many times and yeah. Any questions on?
So is that the yellow? Is that like a tunnel, like a canopy or something?
No, so it's not, it's no.
Like what is
It's a connect.
It's just, it indicates how they'll access the building. So it's,
the space between? They have to leave. Okay.
yeah, so it's,
I'm trying to picture where it is in the building and I'm like,
It's partially covered, isn't it?
it is partially covered here.
There's a little bit of an overhang.
And we can look at, so the 3 examples we currently have are Academy, which is
Yep.
attached.
Mhm.
just because of code and certain reasons is attached. Murphy, which it's a pass-through between the buildings, and then Talbot's a little further, but it has a canopy over it. And so as we're looking at these three, so Hamilton and Nash, talking with the buildings, talking with maintenance. West August's got a couple of issues we want to talk about when we get to West Augusta, but the big thing is that close in proximity, the ability to do something in the future if we want to, need to. But the most important is the sight lines. So I keep sight lines in mind. Short run, see the building. So I indicated with the highlight, but it's not any, there's nothing there right now.
Okay.
So moving on, any other questions on Hamilton?
Are the modules gonna have bathrooms?
They do not have bathrooms.
So that's, yeah,
That's been the case,
going back and forth to the building.
right? So the buildings have protocols and procedures for students to use restrooms. And we've been doing that for 5 years now at Academy, Talbot and Murphy.
I would just look farther away
So I would look farther away from,
from the door, like is the door that right there?
yeah, the door's literally right here.
It actually is closer than.
It's closer than,
Closer than it
does.
appears.
It does look-
it's closer than Talbot.
Yeah,
Okay, all right.
So we've
Trying to visualize it.
been using the other building that's,
It looks like a lot, like, I just think light, like,
Mhm.
I'm going to the bathroom. Nope, I'm going to the park.
yeah, and we've talked a lot with the principals and we do, so we have a good data, 5 years of data from, or 4 years really, because of the pandemic, from the other three buildings. And a lot of it is also, we intentionally put fifth grade out there to build that responsibility
Right.
routines.
Mhm.
Because they're going to the big school next year, right? So we would not put second grade out there, for example.
Mhm.
So we feel that, and I think the principals agreed that fifth grade makes most sense out there.
So it's just basically a crosswalk? There's no, like a 3-4 foot fence
There's no fencing. No.
that keeps.
You know, like yeah, like a lane. Here's your lane. Here's your lane from here to here.
Yes.
I guess our
So-
questions have been like is it to make sure the students know where to stay and go, or is it for?
Safety and.
Safety, yeah.
Yeah.
I know that's
Safety
deceiving, but
and-
it just looks like,
Like, wouldn't it make sense to just do a 3-foot fence? Going straight across?
And then have gates in it, or how
Yeah.
do you get out of it? So you need egress, fire egress to get out of the
yeah,
fencing.
One gate.
What's blocking that gate from being opened?
No, but I don't think the average child would. Where there's just a yellow brick road. I don't know.
So again, Talbot and
I think I.
Talbot and Murphy have been doing this for years now.
Do you put the fear of God into them ahead of time? To not go out of that crosswalk?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, we would, I think, lean on what they do have in place. They do have procedures and protocols in place. We haven't heard of any issues with that, but certainly
Not one kid in the last 4
Not that-
years that like,
a
the-
flight.
I mean, recess is also, I mean,
we can revisit that.
they're all outside at recess and there's not a ratio of, staff to kids that couldn't happen at recess too.
yeah, you're right.
I
I
think,
mean, I've seen the other ones. It's just that one for some reason looks so far away from the.
Yeah, I'd say it's about 25 feet, Jeremy, maybe 25, 30 feet from
From the door.
yeah, I mean, I don't know exactly where it's landing. I'd have to see
Yeah.
that. It's not a huge,
I feel like that one's
Mhm.
closer. What we're,
the Talbots.
yeah.
And here,
Okay.
there's also an entrance to the building here too.
is that gonna be an access? I was,
Won't be connected.
So is there a hallway through and they use that entrance instead of where your cursor is?
There's a hallway, like, if you think about Academy, they can move between the rooms, but there's a long hallway here. And then the 3 classrooms.
So where, all right, because I don't know that school that well, where in proximity of the bathrooms
I can
from-
speak to that. Is it?
from the
Right
modules?
when you
So will they have, is there plans to have access to that other door?
Yes,
And I just wondering about the door that has the yellow there. Why is that considered the primary door access?
it's on grade.
Downgrade, okay.
Okay.
But there's no reason why a student could exit the other way and go up those
They could.
steps, right?
Yeah, but the accessibility is here.
Accessibility makes sense. So I think that this is gonna work to our advantage, and the reason is if you look at where that one that's close to the third red box there,
Yeah.
but no, the other way,
Yep,
where it's very close, it'll be almost sitting up against that door. Just inside that door is where the former fifth grade classrooms were. So that's where fourth grade will be. It's a part of the building where all the upperclassmen are, so to
Mhm.
speak, class people, however you want to say that. Bathrooms are there. So if that's an option, they could easily get the procedure that, sure, we have the access the other way, and that's a viable option as well. But if they want to make it the practice that the majority of students will go,
are
That
directed
way.
that way.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
they
and that-
stay inside and, yeah.
that can certainly be looked at as well.
Yeah, and we did last set of modulars, we talked a lot about this because it was there's that like instinctively like, well, I can't just put like 8-foot fencing here and you just got them kind of penned in there, but there is fire egress.
Yep.
rules
Right,
with that.
but then I'm just thinking, where are the bathrooms? So if there's a kid that waits till the very last minute to go to the bathroom or whatever, it may be like, how close are the bathrooms to those exits?
Indoor.
Yeah, so it's on this side
But either way you go in,
There's
but
bathrooms
just,
either way.
is right here, bathroom.
Okay.
And
All
but
right,
again, from a accessibility standpoint, too,
that's,
like if we had a
that's
student in
important.
a wheelchair.
Yeah.
That's the way
And the
right
cafeteria is
over.
right there too.
cafeteria is right there.
cafeteria is right there. It's really, it's an ideal location,
Okay.
Yeah.
honestly. If you were to go over and look at it, I know it seems a little far. and I
But-
know there's always a risk anybody could take off, but hopefully we have good accountability of when
Mhm.
students are coming and going. And
Mhm.
I think that's just up to the building, making sure they
Okay.
have solid practices. And yeah, it's not putting the fear of God into kids, but talking about the seriousness of making sure you're going from A to B. And
We've connected the principals too on this because again, at Talbot Academy, Murphy, they've been doing it for a number of years now, so. Ashley, Lindsay, and Francesca have been, there's been good questions coming in. We're connecting them with the building, so. There's already routines established across the district for having modular classrooms.
it's actually a good green space there too, where your cursor kind of is.
Right
So
here,
that's an outdoor classroom there.
Mhm.
It's a great place for those guys in good weather to access that very easily, so.
Nice.
but I think the freedoms of I think the younger students are, in terms of supervision, but I think as they get in a fifth grade, they're outside for recess more. I think there's activities where they're outside of
For
the.
sure, and they can do recess on that side of the building, they can live a lot of their day on that side of the building, where we tend to put younger students on the other side. So, just from having been there a long time.
Thanks.
Yes, sir.
This question is a little bit away from budget, but I'm
Sure.
just gonna take a risk. When students in our modular classrooms, use the restroom, is the bathroom pass like a fob so they can get into the
Correct.
exterior door in the main building?
I don't know the answer to that, what the practice.
They fob in and out.
That was gonna be my question.
Oh.
I was gonna have the same.
They don't want
They
to know the-
fob.
I was gonna ask about the access, like, how would they get the access to the door? Is it monitored?
Yep, so
My concern would actually, I think you probably would have an easy time controlling the kids. My problem would be other people accessing,
Stranger danger.
yeah, in and out of the school. If you're gonna have the open access for the kids to be able to go to the bathroom.
If it's a fob,
So I have experience.
Yeah.
Professionally and as a parent, when my son was at Murphy, it was new, the module was new, he's fifth grade there. And he told me all about the protocol of, it's the fob that's on, it's almost, if it's on it's something that indicates it's hanging, that it's for the bathroom. There's a sign up sheet, so they have a good routine in terms of, when they go, who goes.
Okay.
But it's that singular, so it's fobbed at both doors.
Okay.
And I think getting into sight lines, and we'll get into it when we talk about West Augusta in a couple minutes, is the staff is there's windows in our doors,
Mhm.
staff's watching, so they're observing, no different than when they're outside with the kids at recess observing, they're just that door observing.
thanks.
The only concern I've ever heard from Murphy saying with being a parent that was people wandering into that area.
Mhm.
Do you think that will happen at this space? I mean,
No different than, you mean someone on the property?
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's like at pickup, I think the way they've worked through that is just their routines of pickup, at drop off and pickup where parents are meeting.
Mhm.
because they, people can be on the grounds any time of the day. But we've heard that concern. So they've talked through that, what the protocols look like. Again, it's really around drop off and pick up sometimes.
It's a little different too, because here it's a little off, whereas Murphy, it's kind of like right up, right there. And there's a walking path.
Yeah.
There's a walking path.
Yeah, Talbot's probably the best example, which,
Oh, yeah.
and we can, we can look at, how we could make changes going forward, to, if it's fencing of some sort, but like that idea of like just have it, unless it's a built connection hallway between the buildings, but even then there's fire codes that we're trying to work,
Right.
codes that we're trying to work around. So we think it's the best. We think it's the best option. But don't, my drawing in the Google map is probably not the best indicator. I'd encourage, once they're being put in place, once foundations are being done, which are next month, I'd encourage members of the committee and the public to pop by and on a weekend or a night and just see, and I think you'll see that it's not as long as it is on my map here.
Do any of these schools host champions through the summer?
Yes,
So is that impacting it?
we've already worked with champions that they're typically here. It's gonna be over here
Okay.
for the summer program. Glad you mentioned that because champions is an update here.
I have one more question, sir. I'm sorry, one more question. Do we have security cameras facing where the new construction's going?
No, do we have security cameras?
Yeah.
During construction?
No,
Well, yeah,
Or-
no, not during, just
or-
in general.
After.
steal my thunder.
Are you, I don't want to steal your thunder.
So as we get into West,
All right, all right, we'll
Yep.
talk about West. All right,
West.
but it's a great question.
yeah.
Because we
keep it
don't
clear.
have, at the primaries, we don't have exterior facing cameras.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yep.
Just in the vestibules? Do we have-
Yes.
Yeah.
Any other questions on Hamilton before I go to Nash? All right, Nash. Okay, just to orientate everyone, Stetson Building's over here, main entrance of Nash, the playground, the library. So originally, it was going to be here.
Yeah, old roof.
What's that? Old roof. Originally, they're gonna be over here. But given where the utilities are, the decision was made to put over here, which I think we were getting some feedback. People were concerned about it being over here. So now it's tucked behind the building. It's right by the playground. It's 2 units here, which for Nash, another pretty easy one, 2 existing 5th grades. Just shift out to the mods, frees up space within the building. Nash is adding a K for next school year, so that'll take one of the spaces. And then we have a program within the building, which there'll be some shifting in it. It gives the program a little more breathing room with space. Francesca's working with staff on where the shifts will happen. So again, it's programmatically, it's a pretty straightforward plan. Just bring 5th grade out, frees up space within the building. They would be located here. Here would be the new existing fire lane here, which, I mean, the fire lane is truly for like fire trucks and emergency vehicles to pass. But the idea of it now coming behind the playground was a little more attractive, where before it was kind of going right between the playground.
Yeah.
And the mods here, and then access, again, no structure, no nothing, canopy, for now. But access right into the school here. Here's the main office, principal's office, bathrooms here. So in talking with the principal and maintenance, and seems like a good plan for Nash.
So they're gonna have to pave that fire lane, because that's kind of hilly right there, isn't it?
It's pretty flat here.
It's still flat there?
That's where the,
Yeah, I mean, I think youth football was practiced here
I
forever.
thought, because it kind of slopes down a little, so I didn't know.
Oh, over here, yes,
It slopes a little.
definitely here too, yeah.
Okay.
But now that we're doing this additional asphalt work,
Mhm.
that's
They'll-
part of,
They'll
part of why,
rate it or whatever they need to.
correct, so that was part of the additional appropriation
Okay,
is for all the site work that has to happen now that we know the actual locations.
You could throw
Are
some
we,
accessible
ramps.
stuff
Yeah.
right there and make the playground fully accessible too, if they wanted to.
That's a great idea. And
so we're adding a kindergarten at
At-
Nash,
a third kindergarten.
a third kindergarten at Nash. And is there any kindergartens that we're eliminating in any other schools? Because their enrollments are lower.
No,
Is currently everybody have two or currently everybody else is,
everyone's 2 or 3.
and there's no decline?
No, we're actually growing at the primary level. So the 7 modulars are, because we're adding 3 grade level classrooms next year.
Yep.
And to address the space issues with some of our special ed programs.
Okay. Good.
And so the thought, and I guess we'll get into Wes's funding for some other things. We just have to see what happens with all the site work that has to happen. But the idea of, going forward, any fencing, stuff like that, we'll see where the project lands this summer.
Do any of them look more challenging to actually get like the foundations? Like, is there?
Wes,
Or anything?
yeah, Wes has.
I guess
So, and that's why this has been a couple of years in the making in terms of why we chose the schools we did and the locations we did,
when we did them.
strategically for growth across the district of adding 3 classrooms, where programs are, what buildings can absorb modulars, all of that's been factored into not only choosing the buildings themselves, which schools, but the locations on the property. Some are very difficult, like Pingree, very, very difficult to get modulars at.
There's no way to
There's no space.
space.
Oh, yeah. the bottom.
Any other questions on Nash? All right. The last one, West Augusta. Okay. So, well, first foundation, so the Nash and Hamilton will be foundations like it is at Academy and Talbot. If you think about Murphy, how it's kind of up on pylons, raised, won't be as raised because the tying of the building can be ADA compliant. Murphy's had to be raised to meet the building. These will be raised slightly, very slightly, because they're on pylons, because they're in North Weymouth. So
The water.
water, yes. Yes. Now, there's a lot of there's egresses and there's drainage, there's all sorts of things underground that you don't see at any of our buildings. So it's a lot of it factors a lot into where we locate these. There was talk of putting them over here, there's talk of putting them over here, there's a huge egress that runs underneath. So this was identified as the best
And
location.
that's the back of the building?
Yes, so
So you,
front here, back, playground over here.
yeah.
I know, it seems, when you look at a map, you're like, well, why can't you just put it there? But there's factors of where you tie utilities in, there's factors of what's under the ground. So there's a lot of rainwater tanks and sewage tanks under here. There's an egress that runs underground, all the way to like this, I forget what street is over here.
Hey, wait, I'm sorry, can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
What do you mean egress? Like under,
A paper
for
street, kind
people?
of.
Yeah, sorry, not egress, it's like
Like a bomb shelter?
a drain, like
Oh,
a drain system.
And like,
Sorry, not egress, I'm using it wrong.
Water team.
So,
Well, like plumbing, it's like.
Yeah, pipes.
like literal drain, okay. Not this.
so this location,
Over this. And then-
you know, when you look at the aerial view, kind of like, you know, the way it's constructed, architecture kind of rounds out nicely. The problem is,
Exit into that building right
the
there.
problem is you're leaving this building and you're going in here and there's really the sight line is kind of tough to see.
Yeah, but there's
Yeah.
no exit or entrance right in
No.
front of them.
No,
Here?
classroom.
Classroom, utility closet, you have utilities. Again, you know, having done 2 rounds of these things, we've learned a lot about how it just seems like you can just blast a hole through that wall and connect it. And there's so many factors that this is truly the most feasible location. We could have gone through a wall, but then you're gonna take 8 feet of a classroom away from a teacher because you're gonna build a hallway.
Do they have to be together? Like, what if you separated them and had them not next to each other?
So there's really no other spot that,
You'd have to
That they
run
wouldn't be able,
utilities
they wouldn't be able to
twice,
fit
too.
in anywhere.
The cost of running utilities for 2 times would be increased.
there's a cost prohibitive piece to it. But there was really no other place that we could put them. Really, that was the only place. So that's where they are. But the problem now is, we're trying to just, you know, operationally. So so the goal here is 5th grade.
Mhm.
Principal Pratt has been, looking at other options. They're not ideal options, so, we're actually gonna go down Friday and look at some options. And options might include, you know, maybe there'll be fencing in a way that is beneficial to the building, fencing we could do potentially. The idea of some security cameras, Rebecca has been floated. But we just wanna walk the site again, talked with, John McLeod again, like today, talked with Lindsay again today. So we have 3 ideas on the table of how to use them. And then we have options on how to, you know, how to accommodate those ideas.
So those 2 that come out are classrooms.
The other
That
problem
one.
is, they have 3 5th grade classrooms. They don't just have 2, so.
So those
That's
2
a
are
concern.
classrooms on both sides that
Yep.
come off the building. What's the middle? Is that a hallway?
These are all classrooms. I don't know if anyone's been in West Augusta.
Mhm.
Architecture is very interesting.
Yeah,
There's almost, I don't want to say hidden classrooms, but
Those wings.
there's almost little wings coming off. So you almost have classrooms behind classroom, like, so,
So that's not a hallway, right?
no, so they're all, I mean, the hallway is, you come in and there's like a
They're
tight
in the
hallway
middle.
here, but this is a classroom and this is a classroom. So it really is all classrooms. So you'd be cutting through 2 classrooms if you came in this way,
Go to the left a little bit.
all classrooms.
This side by
Yep.
side.
Left.
Oh, left
In that middle, that little bit.
classroom.
That's a classroom.
Yeah.
Yeah, it goes, yeah, it's.
Yeah, there's
That's
classroom and
the
there's
side
classroom.
classroom.
That's where the 5th grade is right now, right?
I believe so. And I think,
Yeah,
CEP
libraries.
CEP 3,
is,
3, 4, 5 is it?
yep, here, and then there's classrooms here. It's a very interesting architecture.
This is.
Yeah.
Because the sightline bothers me.
We
I think
think,
it does everybody, but,
we think we have a solution. We just would really want to,
and I look at like, that's a long haul if it's pouring rain out, if
Mhm.
it's snowing
Snowing.
like crazy.
Yep.
You're gonna have a lot of
And they
accidents.
have to go to the
well, we
bathroom.
would, at that point, like at Talbot, canopies. So we're exploring the idea of canopies too. And
Oh, man.
so if you look at, again, Talbot's a great example of it, with the canopy. Murphy. So canopies are doable to protect for weather. But it's for us, and we talked a lot with Lindsay recently about this. And she's working with, you know, CPAC as well, because there was, you know, we just want to make sure that it's an option that's good for everyone. But and I don't want to talk too much more about what
So
we're
John
thinking.
McLeod knows like what's under the,
Oh, we all know, it's, yeah, DPW, it's
The egress.
Yeah.
The egress, the turkeys, all those things,
It's,
all the X's, you cannot dig here, you can.
So where the cursor is right now, it has to stay open for like the fire lane or whatever, right? Because isn't there a gate going across there right now?
Says
Like a
temp-
sort of,
temp gate,
sort of
yeah.
gate temper, yeah.
yes, so you kind of, you're going down the road with thinking about with fencing and making sure we have proper fire lane and everything.
Go to second
But
floor.
we, again, without actually
Put it on the-
going there with the right people to
Right.
understand the dimensions and codes and I don't want to throw too much out there, but I think we have a solution that will make it a very to allow fifth grade to go out there.
Are those trees, are those,
Are they-
is that West Augusta property or
It's like a
swampy, right?
it's a storm drain.
There's a
Okay,
fence there too, right?
Yeah.
there's like a 4-foot
Yeah,
fence, I
yeah.
think.
But these are definitely not easy. I do the same thing. I look at it, I'm like, well, why can't we just throw it there? Then you get into the detail of like a million layers and factors and then.
And off the library won't work? Like in the front of the library?
No, you'd have to,
That's near the main entrance, right there. Nope, right there. Yeah, yeah. That's an exit. That's usually where the third graders used to come out.
right,
But to the right of that is the library.
right here's the library.
Yeah.
Why not put-
All the utilities, so I think utilities run here. And
In those lines, those like horizontal lines, that's utility room right there.
right here, right?
Yep.
There's another exit on that side too, right?
Which, right here?
Yeah.
Yes.
That's utility. That's the door, I think, to utility.
Yeah, you have the utility room, you have the utility room,
Mhm.
then you have an egress
There,
to
yeah.
the building. So we were really liking here, but you don't see it. There's a number of utility poles and wires here.
It's not a big space either. It's kind of, the parking lot's kind of small.
But there, again, number of factors of what determines where it can go. Height, height of the building, what's around it, above the ground and under the ground. What we have to have for fire code and building code. So again, this is really the only option of location. But now you need to figure out operationally how.
Yeah, it's too bad you couldn't move it a little bit to the right more. So it's not this big, huge
Here, I
and closer a little.
I think, so there's the, I don't want to call it a river, but
There's
Under-
there's water,
it's
yeah,
like-
there.
rain here.
Marshy.
Yeah, I think it runs, I think it like runs here. But again, you can't go down for pylons or for
Swampy.
foundations. And then the property kind of ends here and it dips down off grade, but very steep, so you really wouldn't be able to get a fire lane there.
Oh, with all the water there already.
And these are schools, if you remember, we looked at the first time we did modulars and
Yeah,
in Academy, Murphy and Talbot were
the
more
easiest.
viable options
Yep.
then. Now we're doing more. And we're looking at schools that weren't great options before, but we're making it work.
No easy solution.
No, so just to summarize, 3 locations, went over the funding, went over the 3 locations, the programming of it. There's some logistical issues in particular at West that we have to work through. I hear the committee completely on the idea of, cameras and fencing and security and safety. And so I've made notes, even sitting here. I know Dennis Jones was at Murphy and he helped kind of develop those protocols. So I'll make sure Dennis touches base with the 3 buildings that will have new ones just to talk through safety protocols. So I'm
Yeah,
comfortable.
and it would be
confident there.
great if we have new principals at West, but
Mhm.
if the ones that already have the modulars, they have, a table up to what's worked out for them so that they can get.
So the biggest thing I've heard from all 3 buildings, with all the stuff we just talked about, the biggest concerns the staff had was storage.
Storage, yeah.
And so with this design, we're putting in counter space with storage and a teacher closet. The
Oh.
original 7 only had a utility closet. So learned from our mistakes in the past, and I'm not discounting at all anything that's been brought up here,
No,
but the buildings
you
have,
know what you know.
but the buildings who lived through these, that's been the biggest concern. We don't have,
Rebecca and I toured,
that's right, you guys, yeah.
in the year,
Yeah, early fall. right?
early fall, and that was
That was
echoed.
feedback.
But once they start to get into place, we'll look again, and certainly from a weather standpoint. And just we have people feel comfortable where we can do canopies and fencing, we will look to do that. But I think the priority for kind of fencing and understanding how it's gonna work with the building is west right now. I think
Lindsay and I have been in constant conversation about it as well. Kind of floating ideas on what's appropriate to be housed in that area too. All right, any other questions?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Moving on to contracts and procurement.
So I will stop sharing for now. Projects, let's see. Just an update on where we are with some of our projects. We talk about the procurement of them all the time. May. So I know we talked about the press break, CT at the high school, that's in, the CT childcare program. The resurfacing of the play area has been done, the fencing's installed. So the last piece at the high school CT childcare is the Nova coating, which is basically like that nice shiny popping, almost like they have at Chapman. So that'll happen when weather permits. That'll close out that project. We have a new POS system for culinary. We had a question last time about swim with a friend.
Yes.
That small amount of opera money was helping with that as a,
For the rental fees. Yeah.
for the rental fees of the pool space.
It's not just Weymouth.
No, it's the collaborative.
Yeah, so the staff volunteer their time.
Right,
Yeah, 100%.
and then so swim with a friend is really renting.
Yes, the pool space, yeah.
Explain what that was.
Yeah,
So the swim with the special needs friend is a program that volunteers go with the special education, sub-separate special education programs as well as the collaboratives. And they swim with them for a couple of hours. It's a great program.
It's fully volunteer.
It's all
The
volunteers,
teachers
yeah.
don't.
So is it like once a week? Is it like a benefit?
So collaborative does it a little bit more than Weymouth does. They go twice a month. And then, yeah, it's like 2 hours a day. Every other Tuesday. It's a great program.
Every other Tuesday for like 16 weeks. So
Again, the collaborative goes from November till May. But I'm not really sure what Weymouth does. Weymouth cut back on who was going for that program, so I'm not really sure at this point too. Go. I think it's only elementary, but
correct.
for the collaboratives, it's ages 8 to 12, maybe 12.
Yeah.
It's all volunteers. They're the most amazing volunteers.
They are. June is, the woman who runs
Oh,
it is
she's
amazing.
swimming at Westagusset Beach one day, and she was like, "That's Bella," and I'm like,
She is fantastic.
"She's so nice, so nice." It's a great
She
program.
is.
And then other projects, baseball and softball field fencing has been done. We're waiting on the softball scoreboard still, and then we'll be doing the stadium scoreboard sometime in the fall. I think I got I mentioned that Hamilton.
Construction over there and all that work. This is a lot less geese. Kind of nice.
That's a bonus.
Hamilton asphalt I mentioned. Johnson, this came up the other night, it's school committee,
The playground.
I'll update here, I don't know if that satisfies. So here, so we did look at, so Johnson has, there's 2 questions, air conditioning and the play structure. air conditioning, so there's 16 air conditioners, they're all over 10 years old. The only reason we would reuse is if we had one break somewhere else, and in the time we're waiting for a new one to be delivered, we could just reuse one of the older ones as a temporary. We haven't seen any supply chain issues with the window units, so I don't envision that. And then the other piece is if you remove it, as I mentioned in the school committee, they're all the buildings weren't designed as window units, so we have the carpenters go in and cut out massive holes.
Mhm.
So you remove that unit, now you have this huge hole in the side of the building where the window was once, so then you have to invest money to board it up. At that point, you're already in for what a window unit would probably cost. So it was a great suggestion. We looked at it. So the ACs will just kind of remain there for now. And the other question was on the play structure. So we have locked it up. So the play structure is locked up. The play structure is no longer within standards or regulations. So that structure will unfortunately be coming down at some point.
So talking about Johnson, have you heard, is there any rumors on the use or repurpose of it?
No, someone mentioned that it came up at North Weymouth Civic Association meeting the other night. So the committee, I think it's the facilities committee that Kathy might be on.
Mhm.
Correct.
Well, that committee will need to meet to talk about Johnson. We talked about Johnson when we made the decision to go with the modular classrooms versus renovating Johnson. So as of today, it's still a school building, not being used, being checked on regularly. And next steps would be to reconvene that group, to talk about it.
To check that, okay. Just didn't know if it ever came up.
I think there's lots of rumors about what's happening and not happening. For now it's storage. We have stuff stored there for now.
Nothing expensive or anything?
No.
Just in case anybody wanted to have.
No. You're doing us a favor. You took it away.
Yeah, in case anyone's listening.
No, but we also have all the buildings alarmed and checked by school patrol regularly.
Every night.
Tell you how
Every day.
often, but it's often.
Yeah. Or what time?
At what time? Test us.
Can I ask a question? Back to the baseball, softball, you said the fences are done.
Correct.
The scoreboard for softball?
Is ordered. We've run utility and National Grid's been out. There's a temporary one there.
Oh, the temporary one today,
Yeah,
okay.
which is not, it's, at least it's something, at least,
It's really low,
at least when I went to the game the other day, and I wasn't asking like,
yeah.
what's the score? We didn't even score.
Yeah.
So it's a temporary
Little thing on wheels.
digital sign, but we want the real deal.
Okay, and then you said the big one will be in the,
The stadium will be sometime in the fall.
In the fall.
That one's, we did the procurement and everything. We finalized what we said, the priority was obviously softball because of the season. So after sometime this summer, we'll revisit and start that work. And I always say it should be a.
Yeah.
You know, a replacing,
Swap out if you.
swap out.
okay,
As long as those I-beams in the ground and the standards for scoreboards in terms of installation. And be able to withstand hurricanes and stuff is much different than it was when those original boards were put in, so. There's that piece, but that's on the vendor to help us figure out.
okay, thanks.
If you want to hear freedom of champions too.
Thank you. So, speaking of rumors, Champions were exploring the possibility of adding it at Chapman. So EEC allows for it up to age 13. So for us, that'd be sixth grade, potentially some seventh graders. So we met with Champions, Alyssa's connected Lori Lee with Jenny Dolan's, had conversations about, this before school program, after school program, what are the needs? So I think it's something that we're hopeful for September. I think the want is there, but we have to make sure that within the scope in terms of our existing contract, we can do this, and not have to go out to bid again because it's a different scope. And
Oh,
so we're just always,
Built-in fee
we,
structure.
we're so, it's something that I think until you work in public, the whole public procurement and public dollars and, we have to be super tight with all of that stuff. So, we're looking at all of that. Long
Yeah.
answer to the easy question. But the goal and hope would be that there could potentially be in September, some additional before school activities, supported by Champions for sixth grade.
Do you think you're leaning towards before?
So that was out the gate, that was a question of like, so if you think about before school for Chapman, in line with Champions and, their times, it'd only be 50 minutes. So to
Right.
be a feasible program, you'd want some before school and after school opportunities. It worked here pre-K, just having the after school because the number of hours.
Yeah.
But to only offer before school at 50 minutes wouldn't really be feasible.
What about space wise though? Because we rent out that space so often.
Right, yeah, so that's part of the conversation with, the building administration and, is about what space would need to be. Multiple spaces would probably be licensed, knowing that only certain ones be used, but then you could, at least when you license multiple spaces, you can shift around
Okay.
depending on the day.
Makes sense.
But there's appetite for maybe something more physical before school and maybe more academic support after school. Jenny's got great ideas, Lori Lee has great ideas. So it's that and just making sure we're in line with the contract as well before we really put it out there officially.
Any questions from the committee about that? Do you have anything else for contracts and procurement?
No,
Moving on to fiscal year 26 budget.
thank you. So, again. See. Sorry, Rebecca, you can see that, right?
you're good.
Okay, at long last. We'll start with final fee cycle review, ESY subrates athletic game coverage. At long last, we've gone over this many times. We've made edits from last meeting, which I think have all been reflected. Excellent. So what the proposal is, and we've added fees here that weren't here before. They existed. They weren't just here before, like class dues. So with the exception of the class dues, in the exception of athletics, to balance our budget for FY 26, we've proposed an increase of 5% across the board for all fees, with the exception of athletics. And as I mentioned, the class dues, right, Alyssa?
Correct.
And the simple answer on the class dues is they're so new on here. We didn't have time to really the building wasn't recommending changing them, so. But we kept them as they are currently. And just to remind folks that, there's like $120,000 impact to the budget by raising the fees 5%. So it sounds like 5%, it must generate all sorts of money, but when you factor in what the natural cost is for the staff that support those programs, the kind of above and beyond revenue we would generate would just be around $100,000. And conversely, on the athletics revenue or athletics fee piece, the operating budget was increased this year through the budget process, the operating budget. However, the fees were not increased. And the impact of that was negligible in the overall budget, but we're going to look at ancillary revenue through a banner program, through other fundraising too.
If there's more.
Yeah, correct.
No increase to the charging stations.
No, those are new fees as well, so we kind of kept it as it was. Sorry, yeah, that was not. So that's the user fees. And then also the ESY rates. Really the non-contractual rates. That was an increase, I think, in line with the COLA increase, 2.5%. As well as our building sub rates. And then this one drives me nuts. It's always on the, in your packet, you have the game coverage. I think Alyssa, you worked with the AD. We updated those to reflect like the
Softball,
or
yeah.
softball scoreboard.
Board and,
We're going to, can we just, before you hit that,
yes.
can I just make one suggestion with the P analysis?
Yes.
So it looks great, and thank you so much for including the class dues on it too. So now members of the community can just have one document to go to for the whole shebang,
Yes.
which is appreciated.
Yep.
Just my one suggestion is if I'm just doubly do right and I'm looking at this and I see 5% increase with the athletics fees and then the class,
Oh,
I'm gonna immediately
yep.
have heart palpitations. Can there just be like an asterisk or something by those two categories?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a great point. Yep.
Or like, yeah, where it says 5% increase in parentheses, like except for.
Yep. Yes. I think we'll,
Good at it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
But it looks great. And then the only other thing I'll say is we can definitely discuss this at another time or never, but there's strong advocacy for a charging station at the high school.
yes, it's actually,
Yeah, I know. I'll let you decide. I know.
we actually, Mike Bell has been advocating too, so we're looking at how we can pull from the building. And even though we'll charge for it, it will still be a charging station. But yes, we hear that advocacy.
Yep.
Cool.
And I appreciate if we maybe asterisk the 5% increase and have it say like no increase and then asterisk the other one. So we'll clean this up so the hope is and we go through all of these, like we've done in the past, the committee vote favorable action to go to the full school committee, the school committee either voted on the 15th, or if we had to do it a subsequent meeting, we could obviously do that. But our preference and goal would be if we could get a vote on May 15th, just with all of our update of our literature and everything.
And transportation.
And transportation, want to get
And what.
bus applications out.
Get invoice cloud.
Any other comments or questions or suggestions for the fee analysis?
No, but thank you. Thank you for going back.
Is there anybody from the public that would ask questions on this, on the fees?
Fees? Okay. Next one is the ESY rates, and we talked about many meetings. 2.5% COLA increase with rates. If nothing there.
Just for a talking point, Brian, it was last year that we did a market adjustment with the ESY rates
It was
for 2 years.
2 years ago.
Okay. So it was a recent market adjustment.
Yeah, we did it. It was 2 and 3 years ago. And then last year, there was contractual language updated in some of the contracts.
Yep.
Reflected here.
Perfect. Thank you.
Substitute rates. Again, adjustment, 2.5%. Market adjustment done several years ago. Jeremy, anything you want to add on this? Nothing really changed substantively, right?
No, just the percentage increase, everything's the same.
Can you explain what a transition period is? Transition periods to assimilate.
Third bullet, do you have that in front of you, Jeremy?
So when a teacher knows they're gonna go out on like maternity leave on Wednesday, the substitute may come in Monday and Tuesday to school with a layout, the plans.
Okay.
Just to allow.
So there is, so they
Yeah.
can come in 2 days before if they go out. Gotcha.
It's super helpful.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Thank you.
School the administration.
That's been a great, never happen again. Come back in 12 years.
And then I apologize, I'll have to see if I can download and then rotate here. The game coverage. Ooh. Excellent.
There we go.
Two more.
Beautiful.
All right. Zoom in. All right, much better. So the game coverage, so the committee next meeting will vote the fees. Or the rates of pay, which have existed. We're just memorializing it in a public document now. In addition to this, at the next athletic subcommittee, Jeremy's done a lot of work with the AD on the procedures.
Awesome.
Yes. Steve.
Thanks. Thank you.
Yes, we have.
You want me to share on the,
Well, if you just, next, so athletic sub will bring it back.
Tired.
we're looking at the thing.
We're in amazement over that catch, Tracy.
Back up on me. Yeah, procedures, we actually just meet we just met recently and, our procedures, we're making good progress, I think, aligning.
And we've been implemented for, we started with winter, really implementing this, and now we're fine tuning for spring.
Yes, in terms of documenting, the different rates for, as you see here, for the, different activities, depending on what season it is, and then also the game workers, and who they are and what roles are needed for a specific event. So that's coming together and I think it's getting better each season. So
And the post,
we're posting positions, so there's access and for anybody who wants to apply, of course, there's some of those positions have somewhat of a skill set to it, I guess. You have to understand the game on some level, or there's a quicker pace to maybe some of the clock stuff. So, but I think I know there's a sub list as well for people who are maybe can't commit to it full time, but interested in filling in, or there is somebody already. So we kind of went through all that
and then he'll report it. So we'll physically have the procedures at the athletic subcommittee in June. So Rob will bring those and.
anything else on that?
No, thank you. I don't know. Yep.
On what is, I see Saturday, $75 a game. Is that, it's under basketball, so is that only for basketball?
I'm sorry, were you winter?
Yeah. See winter, go down, straight down the column. It's not in
The left,
red.
move your cursor left.
Go and see where it says
Now
winter.
go down.
I'll go all the way
A
to
score?
Saturday, 75 a game. To the left, Brian, with the.
Oh, yeah.
Keep going down. Right there.
Yeah.
We can ask about that. Rob, right?
Yeah,
Okay, we'll check on that.
Yeah, I just want to make sure it's clear before we.
Yes, agreed.
yeah.
So-
If I remember correctly, there's a weekday, like this is like weekday race, and this might be Saturday. 'Cause I don't think we really have Sunday competition.
I guess my question was, if there is a different rate for Saturdays, is it sport specific or is that little like asterisk meant to be for the whole document? You know what I'm saying?
I think it's for everything, but it's not clearly indicated that way. So
And then like, what does that mean? So like,
Some of them say 75, so.
yeah, so is it for admin tickets?
we'll get that.
That clarified. I don't remember having any conversation about that. I'm almost wondering if it's even a typo from.
Oh,
That was,
that'd
I
be-
don't know that.
If
for
we
sure.
could just strike it.
One of the things I do know is that they don't always need somebody for every one of these. It just depends. There could be times where they don't need security if it's not a bigger event and things like that. But that's all spelled out on another sheet that he's keeping track of. The athletic director is keeping track of in terms of which ones are actually filled for which event. And sometimes the athletic director is there, so, he doesn't get a
And we
separate
don't need
stipend for that.
Yeah, how do you make that, who makes that decision and how do they make that decision?
Which
He would have to speak to that, but I don't know how he determines which games he's gonna be present at. I don't see-
Not, I'm sorry, not him specifically, like if you need to fill every one of those positions.
I can't answer that either. One of the things I do know that I kind of learned is there might be similar, let me see, maybe in basketball, there's, the clock, 30-second clock scorebook. There might be 3 people who are assigned to that, and but they can determine amongst themselves. They'll sort of decide who's gonna do what. So you'll see, he'll bring that when he comes to do his presentation. He can show you examples of
Okay.
some of the work that being done to do a better job of tracking that. But I don't know in terms of your question.
So we will clarify that, Rebecca, the 75 piece. I don't remember seeing that either now that.
Nope.
And then we will update the fee schedule for the exclusion of athletics and dues, and we'll add to the agenda for May 15th. We'll make those edits.
Can I ask one more question? And then did we decide not to raise the athletic trainer per diem? Is it
We,
60 before?
no, it was 50. So
50.
we raised it to 60.
Love it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yep.
Love it.
Okay on that?
Yeah, any questions or comments from anybody else?
All right, non-union benefit. We talked about this early in the year with the newest members of Unit D, the admin assistants. We just want to make sure that everything's in line in terms of contractual language, non-union benefits language. That's what that exercise was last year. We've gone through this many times. And this is our final draft of what those benefits are. Talks about categories of positions, hours of work year. None of this, nothing really what changed is more, and I'll get into this, what some of the changes were. So we cleaned up, and Jeremy, feel free to jump in on anything I'm not saying, but we cleaned up kind of the roles. Like, so we had to pull roles out that were no longer falling under the non-union, right? But now union positions, we had to pull them out of here, those roles. We looked at, pay frequency doesn't change, no school days, sick leave, all the same. Vacations, but when you get down into longevity, longevity's aligned. Bereavement language is aligned. Personal days is aligned, so it's now consistently 3. Anything else, Jeremy?
No, and I think if I'm not mistaken, a good part of this we had reviewed.
We did before.
Earlier in this fiscal year. I think the biggest thing is the vacation time.
The allotment
Is it's not so much the days, we kind of worked through that with, that was something we had worked through earlier in the fiscal year, the vacation allotment, but it's those couple of paragraphs that we have a little bit of work to do, and if we go down to in that.
I think Brian's on it.
Paragraph,
Are you?
the vacation day begins, so July 1st and June 30th. If a resignation is given before June 30th, it's going to be prorated based on the amount of time worked between July 1 of the prior year and your date of resignation. So that's pretty straightforward. So you're going to get your days up front, but they're going to be prorated if you decide to resign at some point.
it mitigates, payouts. There's like larger payouts that happen in the past. So this the proration of it. So you get your allotment up front because it's hard being working in education. Summer's when you want people to use most of the vacation time, right?
No,
Eh,
not me.
You know, so, and if you're accruing,
You don't
you don't-
never get your full benefit. It's the same with my folks.
yeah, so you,
Never get your full benefit of time if you're accruing because you don't accrue the full amount until you finish that year.
Yeah.
So you really never get the whole benefit.
The other thing we want to avoid is carrying over a lot of days
Yeah.
where you're getting paid out later. And that would be the one strategy to making sure you always have time in the summer. I mean, most people want to take vacation in the summer anyway, not to mention the fact that it is beneficial to the school systems because there's less activity in the summertime. But that does kind of protect that because
Yeah.
if you get it accrued, you come into the summer and you don't have the vacation time, you can't even take a week off unless you go into the negative.
Not backfilling it.
Yeah, that's another issue. So we kind of set it up that way. So if you resign, you're only going to get paid, it's prorated in terms of the amount of vacation time. You would be paid out for because you do have to pay out vacation. So if I were to resign right now and I have vacation, you have to pay it out. But you're not going to pay out the rest of this fiscal year. You're going to pay out just what's prorated, if that makes sense. Even though I have a bank of, say, 10 days. I mean, let's say I didn't use any of those and you would only pay me at this point in the year for like 8 of those days. Does that make sense in terms of
Yep.
being prorated? So then the next thing that we kind of added is if you go to that second paragraph, we are going to allow 10 days of vacation to be carried over, but there's kind of a catch to this. This is just if people are super busy, this happens especially to people who are working in schools. Because this is also going to apply to our administrators who are non-union and working in the schools. And sometimes there's just, you have snow days, you have those other things going on, and they just don't have a chance to take those vacation days. But rather than be in school when school's in session, even though they do have a right to take a vacation day, maybe they're busy during the breaks. And what happens is that towards the end of the year, you have administrators saying, I have all these days, what should I do? Do I just start not showing up? And even when school gets out, that week or two when school ends is still a very busy time. So it's not unusual for superintendent to send out a memo and say, I'm going to allow 5 days to carry over that has to be used by August, or I'm going to allow 10 days or whatever. So rather than have to do that every year and have the superintendent use discretion, this just kind of makes it easier. We're going to carry over the 10 days, but the big caveat is to this is if you don't, those days have to be used by August 15th. If you don't use them, they fall off. So there's very little room for somebody to bank a bunch of days and then say, you're going to have to pay me out for that. Kind of walk through this exercise.
You really want them to take it because of mental health reasons.
You do.
You know, they
Yeah.
need to break.
so in kind of the bigger picture here for us is, collaboration, and Mel's weighed in on this and, we've even talked with, Colby on language. So I guess the bigger point for the committee is, the collaboration with finance, HR. We've talked with superintendent. We've run language by Colby with this, because at the end of the day, the committee is responsible, right? The benefits piece. And what we saw in last few years is there was some inconsistency in benefits and contract language, for, when I say contracts, not the collective bargaining, but like the individual contracts. So what we're trying to do here is we want this to be clear and consistent for all non-union folks. Because even as Jeremy and I was sitting in his office recently, kind of going through old individual contracts, things weren't consistent. And to us, for an organization, contract, but these benefits piece, it should be consistent for all employees.
Yeah.
And so if,
Can I ask why though?
why?
The 20 hours to get health insurance? That's it. Like,
That's,
low to get health insurance for a company.
you think so that's town,
Now,
yeah,
was 18.75, now it's 20. for the
yeah.
longest.
Which I think it's driven by, I want to say it's, don't quote me on this, but I feel like there's an MGL component to it that you're not considered part-time at 20, like above 20, like
It's about 25.
it's what, 25? Yeah, so the
About
town,
25.
but the town, we literally just had this question this week, how many employees do we have
today.
It's 1,140 benefits eligible. Not that everyone takes it.
Right.
But there's 1,140 benefits eligible employees.
That's a liability. Well, that's why, yeah.
It is MGL.
It is MGL.
I was gonna say it's MGL, and there was even at one time it was. I wanna say the district was at like 18 point whatever it was, because I think it was based on a 36-hour work week, so 18 and a half, but the town actually, so it actually went up a little bit.
Yep.
From.
Thank you. I
Recognized by the,
rather than MGL, everyone
by the, school department previously.
Is it MGL specific to education?
public
Just
employees.
Public.
Employee
That's what
benefits.
it's out there.
So again, this document, we wanted to really take the time this year to go through it. The team here wanted to take time to go through this document, make it clear and consistent. It is in line where it should be in line. It's in line with, as we mentioned, the administrative assistants. So, this one, again, we want to implement July 1, like we mentioned earlier in the year. If the committee because again, the committee is, their purview is benefits, right? So if the committee wanted to, ideally, if it got reviewed and voted at the 15th grade, but we could wait a subsequent week. I just wanted,
Can
Yeah,
I, but why not a half a day on Christmas Eve? You got a half a day before Thanksgiving, you get Thanksgiving, you get the day after Thanksgiving,
yep.
and now it's just
Staff
Christmas.
loves-
Come up.
Staff wants the advocacy here.
Which I'm not, but why not?
So
a
the,
half a day
so
Christmas?
these are in black and white, but the superintendent always has the discretion to kick us out a little
I
early.
know, but again, if it's, I know, but
I think it's a surprise.
consistency.
Yeah.
There was a lot of discussion on these days, I will say that, but,
especially I know that, the day before Thanksgiving.
I would love that to be a no school day.
The
I
day
would
before
not.
Thanksgiving.
Yeah,
Negotiate.
I know,
I would
I
like
know that.
my kids in school as much as possible.
I love them daily though.
I love
I love them.
so much,
I love them when they're
but I just like Thanksgiving break.
So and we,
I guess, yeah. But I know some of you guys. Right. Melissa, are workaholics and it's. Right, it's not there.
oh yeah, no,
You're
yeah.
going to be there. Just
I
saying.
appreciate it.
Can I, yes, for the hours of employment,
Yes,
is it required that staff is on campus between those hours? I mean,
these particular staff.
the 8 to 4 or whatever, like, I'm sure they're okay to leave an hour at lunch or whatever, but
It's the work
Like-
hours, but
they're required to be on campus, correct?
we don't have remote
Or
work.
where they're supposed to be.
Be where they're supposed to be. Okay,
Yes.
yes.
That was a good answer. We don't have.
At the
remote work.
administration building.
we don't have remote work. All right,
That's a
thank you
good
for saying, that's a really good answer. Thank you.
You're not at home in your pajamas.
So I'm wondering, so the fee cycle, the ESY, the sub rates, athletic game coverage. I guess we're looking for an action at the next school
Yeah.
committee meeting. And I don't know what the committee feels about the non-union benefits if you want to next meeting.
I'm comfortable.
Same.
We can have Kelly put that on for action at the next school committee.
That'd be great. Then we'll.
Dana, you okay with that? Miriam, are you okay with
Thank you.
that?
Okay.
Only-
Yes, go ahead, go.
Yeah.
Only for on Christmas Eve.
I'll add that note.
I'm sorry.
Chair says.
The non-union benefit package. Is that description also include principles included in that? Is this language consistent with what's in the principal contracts, or is it all?
Good question. Yes, the answer is yes. So,
To know what days his wife's off.
no. So this was part of the confusion and as Jeremy's trying to create new administrator contracts. There was different variations, but the way we look at, so there's the contract for administrator, they sign their contract and then attached to were always these benefits, but they weren't consistent from contract to contract.
So now they will be.
Now they will be.
Right.
And so whether it's and I'm getting very granular here, whether it's the SNU non-union that don't have individual contracts, or it's the SUX that have individual contracts, everyone's gonna follow the same benefits.
So you can get her Christmas
a
present
good
on
question,
Christmas Eve, but you gotta move fast on it. You only have a half a day potentially.
But it was getting very for us, because everything, this is public, all the contracts, everything's public documents, and we were trying to reconcile little differences over the years.
Ashley, did you have a question? Couple questions about the bereavement section. So it says immediate family, spouse, parents-in-law, brother, sister, stepbrother, stepsister, children, foster children, grandchildren, or any member of the employee's household. Does that include miscarriage? Because technically,
I'd say yes.
that's a dead child.
That's a yes.
And then also, does it include ex-wives or ex-spouses as well?
I mean, I think this is a tricky one, certainly bereavement. There's so many scenarios you could list, and sometimes I don't know, it could be, I don't know if uncle's listed in
Yeah,
here.
it's 1 day. It's next page.
Okay. But the uncle could be the closest person to you, and maybe I just hope that within our workspaces, in our buildings, and that we would work with individuals and understand
We have a lot of
situations at hand, but it gets hard to list all of those things. That's not to say that we can't, but
Danielle, can I jump?
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, can I just dovetail? So,
yeah. please.
this language comes directly from the union contracts that we've negotiated.
Thank you.
And the important sentence is actually on the second page of bereavement, where it says additional days may be granted with the superintendent's approval. I think that speaks to the unique circumstances that we can't memorialize in writing.
Every scenario.
But I
You can't.
do know that I'll say all of our past superintendents have approved leaves
Yep.
for various situations. So we try to accommodate people when something happens.
Yep.
So miscarriage is included in sick time? I mean, not sick time, I'm sorry, bereavement
I
time.
think we
I would say it is,
definitely would call that member of a
Immediate.
family. Yeah.
Okay,
and I would hope there would be understanding for
Yeah.
that individual who's going through that, and whether or not they have to even, it would be the less, and I know, unless it's in writing, it doesn't necessarily stick, but I just don't see us running into a situation where
No, we spent a lot of, in the last couple rounds of negotiations, we spent a lot of conversation on this language that we pulled from the contracts into this document.
that
You
is
just
it under
think of them all.
You can't,
from
right.
contract to non-union.
I do think it's important for people to know that miscarriage is included because there's a lot of stigma around what people are allowed to do around that.
Mhm.
And there is a movement out there trying to really, help people acknowledge that it is a death and give them the time that they really need to heal from that.
I think that's also where FMLA comes in.
Yeah, it's covered under FMLA, so.
Yeah.
Similar.
No, we agree, Ashley, for sure.
It's something that a lot of people feel ashamed about, they feel like they can keep the secret, but they should know that they have a trusted person that they can, oh,
Absolutely.
Any other questions?
All right, we'll get into,
The budget presentation?
yeah, budget. So the presentation will be brief because it's a lot of it you guys have already seen, but I just want to do a quick budget update in general too. Ties in with the presentation. So at the federal level, it's like something new every day.
Literally.
So I learned about the skinny budget this week. So at the federal level, looked at that and just focused in on K through 12 education. So for next year's proposed fiscal, and it's worth noting that the federal fiscal our fiscal runs from July 1 through June 30. The federal fiscal runs from October 1 through September 30. So it's off by a quarter, basically. But USED is slated for a 15.3% cut. Lots of talk about funding to the states. So everything looks like it's preserved. For the most part, Title II and IV are in question. I'll touch on that in the presentation. Proposal indicates that Title I funding remains intact. Proposal indicates that IDA is funded at the same level as fiscal 25. And in terms of elimination of programs, Title III, which is for our ELL and our teacher quality partnerships, look to be eliminated in the federal budget next year. So now we kind of drill down to the state. At the state level, our funding per pupil was doubled from the 75 to the 150. So although our chapter 70 rose a couple hundred thousand, a few hundred thousand, as has happened in the past, the unrestricted general governance money was reduced. So it's really a net of roughly the same. So they gave us a little more in chapter 70, but to the town, but they took away the unrestricted money to the town.
That's at the state level.
State level, thank you. And then still in the state, lots of advocacy going on, call to advocacy. So Mel and I have signed a number of advocacy petitions, focusing in on really on chapter 70. But the one that might be most beneficial in real time to Weymouth, to the school department, would be the increase of circuit breaker in tuition and transportation reimbursements from 75% to 90%. So an increase in what we're reimbursed for, and that would be a this year supplemental amount of money, and to lower the threshold of what's called the circuit breaker to kick in, lower the threshold of the tuition down to 37,120. I can't quantify what that would be for Weymouth if that passed. I think it would be significant enough that it would help us to begin to not only balance our budget, start to replenish some of our reserve funds, in particular for special education, because I'll get into it in our presentation, but that's where we're most we have the most volatility and liability right now. Questions on the federal or state before I get, and I'll actually, in the presentation, talk about some of the federal, so maybe hold please. So budget management is scheduled for Tuesday, this coming Tuesday, the 13th, 6 o'clock, council chambers. We'll get, and that's the presentation here. We'll double check with Kelly, just make sure that the following 3 meetings I'm going to talk about are on your calendar. So it's budget management on May 13th, May 19th, so that's a Monday, that's annual town meeting. And then I just got the invite today, June 15th is the council meeting where they anticipate they'll be voting the budget.
And we made a note to have Amy
Amy's gonna add it to our
put
calendar.
on our calendars.
Yeah, Kelly's gonna,
Kelly,
15th is Sunday.
oh, then it'd be June 16th, sorry, June 16th. Before I had the date in my head, June 16th.
Yeah.
Thank you, Tracy.
Brian, did you say June 19th for a vote on the Thursday? Oh.
May 19th is annual town meeting,
No, but then what
Oh.
was the last June date that you gave?
June 16th.
June 16th.
Council meeting.
Council vote, so the school committee before that or after that,
the 12th. The
12th.
the 5th, and then we,
Because typically,
The 5th is that.
We have to vote on the 26th then. Right? We have to revote the number on the 26th.
that's what is it before the council votes or after council?
It's after.
Yes, council, yes, correct. That's June 26th.
Yes.
Correct.
Thank you. Okay, so let me get into the presentation. So for council, they've asked, am I sharing that? Yes. They had 31 questions, which I've answered in like Word form. I'm gonna send that over Friday. I will also have Kelly post it for you guys. Share it in the blog, is that probably the best?
Usually sends it.
Or email?
Sends it-
We're not blogging so much anymore.
Just,
If she sends out the
Why not?
invite, it gets on all, Google calendars.
Yeah.
It's helpful.
I also want to share, I have to go through these one more time, but I want to share all the responses to the questions that the
Oh,
council
that you
will
can,
get.
Kelly will figure out something.
Gotta figure out.
she knows what.
So there's the questions that are asked in advance, and then there's the presentation. I took the presentation that was done to the committee and just trimmed it down to what the council is looking for. But I also added in some new things. That's what I want to share with the committee here tonight. So, you know, Weymouth by the number, do you need me to go through Weymouth? No, you don't need to go Weymouth by the
But
number.
I love that you put those on there. It's helpful.
Goals. Okay, here's what's new. A lot of questions have come up around federal, and I'll go over this at budget meeting on Tuesday. A lot of questions come up around federal grants and the risk to districts if anything's eliminated. So for us, Title 1, 2, 3, 4, and then our IDA grants, our 240 grant, our 262. So, you know, a little over $3 million in these grants. Let's get a cheat sheet here. And so we were on and I'm giving credit to this is University of Georgetown. Listen, I've been doing a lot of webinars and getting information nationally from this. And, you know, in terms of risk for grant, you know, the idea of Title I in IDA, at least for fiscal 26, the feeling that it's low of having it eliminated or impacted to us, mostly because the funds have already been appropriated for FY 26. Any changes to Title I, which is ESSA, Every Student Succeeds Act, or the Individuals with Disability Act, that would require significant votes that of the Senate. And so the feeling is, at least for the next year or two, low risk of any of those funds. What are at risk, as I mentioned earlier, are Title II, which a lot of it's professional development, Title III and Title IV. Not nearly the volume of dollars as Title I or IDA grants. But what is at risk, we feel, or folks are talking feel, is unspent ESSER, which we've spent all our ESSER, and then Medicaid. So there is a feeling that that Medicaid could be at risk, and rightfully and aptly put here, it's, you know, less than 1% for most budgets. So for Weymouth, we budget roughly $650,000. So that's like, you know, that's less than 1%. And so if that went away, that would be the impact. So 3.8 million with Medicaid is what all of these grants are, which is roughly 4% of our budget. So I guess really the story here is that, you know, we don't, at least right now, we don't feel there's a high risk of Title I or IDA going away. We do see a very high risk of ESSER because it was told that you couldn't spend it anymore. And then Medicaid is a partial risk, including also our Title II, III, IV. But even when you add all together, it's like, you know, less than 1% of our budget we feel would be impacted. So that's new in the presentation, that questions that came up. So that's why we included it in the presentation for tonight. Talked about net school spending, we'll talk about it there. And then I think the rest of this is everything you guys have seen. So we updated with the mayor's actual proposed, which was 90,113,902. I think it was like $2,200 more because Ted used a rough 3% number where we had a specific number. And we've made cuts to address the shortfall. Again, repeating information that I've already shared with you guys. But the bottom line is, in order to address the shortfall, 1.9 million, we cut the 20 or so FTEs at the secondary, middle, and high school. The actual RIF was 5.5 FTE. We eliminated the instructional coaches at the elementaries. So we reduced 7 positions. We added the 2 district curriculum positions. So that netted us around 416,000 towards our shortfall. We increased all user fees except for athletics. And the dues by 5%, that's gonna yield us, we think, around 106,000. And then compliance shifts. So basically, when we say compliance shifts, we've had attrition this year that now, because of attrition, we've been able to shift and fulfill some of the positions on our needs list, which are really compliance positions, which picked us up roughly $200,000 towards balancing the shortfall. So all in all, and then this last slide again, I just like to, it's not a Weymouth problem, it's not a Massachusetts problem, it's across the country. You know, over a number of years now, you've seen enrollments just steadily decline and then staffing steadily increase. And for me, the big takeaway there is that the needs of our students are growing, right? And that's really what we've invested in staff is for the needs of students. So what has happened, and I guess I'll summarize it here, is what's going on last year, this year, and next year, is we've had one-time money, we've had reserve funds, we've had ways to absorb. Once a school committee votes a budget, by the time you vote a new budget a year later, we're adding staff because our needs of our students continue to grow. And whether it's a move-in or an IEP results in transportation, or there's a number of things of needs of students. So we've always been able to absorb those with funding and attrition. But we're running so lean now and our revenues are declining and there's no more one-time money and costs are going up that we can no longer do that. It's not sustainable. So that's the real work that has to happen last year, this year, next year. And, you know, I can't believe I'm already going to talk about next year, but let's just talk about next year for a moment. The mayor shared at his presentation about revenues for next year and how, in their opinion, next year is going to be worse than this year. And it's not as much, at least we don't know right now, of, you know, inflation or growing costs, but now it's really a revenue problem, and revenue is declining. And so I just did some quick numbers. So let's just say this year we got of all of the $8 million of the $8.3 million new funds this year, the schools got 32%. So we got, you know, $2.6 million this year. Fast forward to next year, if revenues decrease and, you know, we get the same share, we're looking at potentially a $900,000 cut out the gate just based on revenue. If it's less and say it's 2%, it's going to be more. So we're already, just based on projected revenues for next year, we already know there's going to be cuts again next year of some sort. And so I think it's good for the committee to hear that, because, I mean, although it's a year away, unless revenue projections change next year, we're going to be facing similar situation next year.
My fear is too, while Medicaid isn't necessarily touching us this year, that is going to increase our student need. We're not going to be getting services, the community-based supports, the early intervention, and it's just going to increase our needs in public education.
Yep.
So while yes, the Medicaid is not hurting us yet, there is major advocacy to support Medicaid and fully fund it, because it is going to eventually touch education.
And what I'd like to do is, you know, coming meetings as we're getting numbers from the town on projections already for next year, I want to break it down to like what it means for this year, what we received in funding as compared to what it would look like next year. So basically just do a projection of, we like to project expenses, but let's start to project revenues too, and just see what our budget would look like. So.
Any questions? Go ahead.
I'm not as optimistic as the slides are about, Title I and idea, but, I'm also not prepared to discuss the reason why, but, my question for you regarding that right now is, do you know, has an office been identified that will oversee that with, now that, I feel like we're sunsetting the Department of Ed.
On the federal level, I've
Yeah.
heard rumors, probably the same as you guys. I don't know if anyone,
So we don't know yet.
no.
We don't know.
Question two, can you just remind us, or maybe me, of how much per pupil do we get from chapter 70?
Off the top, how much you get in district?
Yeah.
18,000. I don't off the top of my head. I can get you that exact number.
It's
Well,
way
and-
less than what we need. Right? Is it?
Is it way less than what we need?
You looking at it?
Yeah, I just recently. I
Here's
haven't,
my question. So there's a lot of advocacy happening right now. There's several bills that will be heard by the Joint Education Committee at the State House on Monday. So if folks were to testify or write letters advocating for increased chapter 70 formulas, how could it help Weymouth?
most recent numbers, 18,245 in district. Close.
Per people in
Yep.
district?
And then 19,798 total. So that's a good factor in out of district. So I'd go with, I'd probably that 18,245 would be the in district most recent per pupil.
Got it. And is that, and then the last question to you is, with the anticipated shortfall that it sounds like you're trying to prepare for next year, and that you're trying to psychologically and emotionally prepare
Yeah.
yourself for.
Yep.
Is, if you were to point people towards something to try to increase or to try to make better, is chapter 70 one of those areas, or would you encourage us to look somewhere else?
So thank you. Good question. Thank you for the question. So I'm part of a business administrator lighthouse group, and we sent letters to MASBO and MASS. And our focus area was chapter 70, but we understand that's probably a longer term. Probably because of the formula. And then shorter term, direct impact to us would be circuit breaker.
Thanks, Brett.
Any other questions from the committee? No? This time I'll open it up for public comment if you want to make comments. Do you want to come up, Gus? Yeah, just so,
The mic picks you up.
yeah.
Just following up Rebecca's question for suggested advocacy stuff, I would add a couple of things. I know I've been involved in conversations up there. The circuit breakers come up. The chapter 70 thing is a long-term thing, but more immediate is there's the appropriation of the millionaire's tax allocation.
Oh, yeah.
$2 billion, but 75% of that money went to 25% of the students. Weymouth basically got nothing out of that. So there should be conversations about being more equitable about distributing that money that's allocated for education more evenly across all the districts. So, people are sensitive about the fact that most of the money went to gateway cities. That's just the way it is. So places like Weymouth did not get any of that money. So if there was another add-on to the list, it would be a fairer or more equitable distribution of that money across the board, not just zoning in on particular, 3 or 4 cities across the Commonwealth.
Thank you. Agreed.
And then I just have a question about, I just want to be clear on the staff reductions.
Yep.
So I just want to make sure I'm clear on the impacts in order to make up for the 1.9 million. At the central office, there are 2 administrative positions that are being cut.
Correct.
The assistant superintendent position and
Executive director.
sorry, the executive director, and the arts curriculum coordinator position?
Fine performing arts, yep.
Fine, okay, so those are those two, all right. Then there are about 20 additional positions. And here's where I'm a little confused. How did we wind up with an actual RIF of just 5.5? There's a lot of part-time positions in that mix.
Retirements, resignations.
Okay,
And so the net number, I'm glad you asked me. Let me give, so the net number is 21.5. And the way we got there is, we had to cut positions, including the positions at the high school. So I think it was 19.5 was the final number, and 7 coaches at the elementary.
right.
So what's that math? 26.5, right? So 26.5 positions were cut.
Were they cut or were they also, like you just said, retirements and?
So think positions, not.
Positions cut.
Right, that's what I'm trying, this is where I'm confused. If we're saying positions, but now you're communicating it's a net RIF of 5.5 FTE.
So people, so impact to people. So let's talk positions first. 26.5 positions cut, right?
Let me suggest, while we're on that one, Brian, when we say positions, currently filled positions,
Positions that existed this year will not
Correct.
be in place next year.
are they all currently filled this year? Did we have
Yes.
empty positions? So,
They were at one point filled. At
okay,
some point attrition
all right, so 26.5
cut,
positions cut.
positions cut. We had to add 5. 3 classroom teachers, 4 K at Nash, 5th grade at Hamilton, and 1 in West. And then, I'm sorry, that was, West Augusta.
Yeah.
And then the 2 curriculum coordinators. So the net positions, so we are down a net of 21.5 positions, right?
Positions. Not FTEs.
Now, people, we've had resignations during the year, we've had retirements during the year, we had our normal non-renewal process. Those saw people leave the district. So the amount of people we had to RIF to get to our 21.5 number was 5.5.
Okay, I'm gonna suggest that this communication model minimizes the impact of the cuts. Because if I'm a counselor or a community member, I'm gonna be looking at this and saying, hey, the school's only lost 5.5 FTEs. That's not true. So I think you need a slide.
People RIF.
I think you need a slide that describes what you're talking about here verbally, Brian, but
Yeah.
that specifically says we actually cut a larger number.
We did, right.
Right, but that's not communicated anywhere, I'm going to suggest.
Okay.
Because the way this is communicated right now, this is looking like, hey,
Not so bad.
they only lost 5.5 positions, that's it.
Yeah, I guess we could better communicate what a RIF is versus a retirement.
Yeah, I think you need to have a little slide, and again, not to throw more work at you, because you do
no,
over more than, but just a clarification for Tuesday to just make it very clear that there's a larger number of positions that were lost that we cut in order to get to help that $1.9 million.
21.5.
Yeah, because right now it doesn't look like it was a lot, and I think people will look at it and say, hey, that's not so bad.
Yep.
And that's not really the reality.
No, we had through resignations, retirements, and attrition through the year, that was the 16 people left the district, only
Right.
requiring us to impact the lives of 5.5. But it's a good point in that we can definitely do a slide that just.
That's my only suggestion, all right?
Yep. You get what you're saying, right, Jeremy?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Jeremy, working that.
Was that?
You working that?
Yeah,
You can do it Sunday.
that's fine. I got nothing.
We have the numbers. We have the numbers.
I know you do, you were just tossing them in the conversation, I think they need to be visibly put out there so people understand it's more than, it's just more than 5.5.
Well,
Impact on
Right.
what Weymouth looks like today and what it's gonna look like in September.
Exactly,
nope, fair point.
thank you.
Care of that.
Thanks, Gus. Anybody else? I will take a motion to.
Anyone else?
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
gonna make you guys stay for a couple. Guys hit on one of the things that I wanted to ask about. I think the main other, I just had two things about the 21.5 versus 5.5. Makes sense. Thank you for the further clarification. The thing that's going through my head a little bit is because we have a revenue problem, right? It's a serious revenue problem that appears to be only getting worse. I'm thinking about this from like a public communication perspective a little bit, or a public education perspective. We're talking numbers, but I think one of the things I'm getting drawn to is how do we best portray that we made it work? You all put a lot of work in to get this budget to where it needs to be, but that doesn't mean that it is without a loss
Pain.
to the school district,
Mhm.
not, to employees and to the children in a significant way. And so, I'm not trying to ask you to go out on a limb and, do a woe is me tour, but, I think, in a way adequately portraying what this tangible impact is to not only those individuals, but the educational opportunities or, access to needs that means for our students.
You hit on the word needs. So I think what we have to do is, we're going to do. We had years where we had a needs list that we were just knocking things off by funding it. We need to really put that needs list back out there very publicly and say, this is what we've added. We're adding these positions back on the needs list because we don't have them anymore. So STEAM was an example last year, assistant principals. So and I'm glad you mentioned, because we're gonna make it much more visible in the budget process of like the needs list. Even though, like you said, we don't have an anticipation of it getting funded in the next foreseeable year or so. But doesn't mean it shouldn't live somewhere, so that we can, whether it's next year or 10 years from now, we have that list of like, this is what we lost.
Right, and I know that's great, and I couldn't agree with you more. Because where my head keeps going to is, you keep harping on revenue problem, right? It's beyond the scope of this group, but like, if the town is more aware that we do have avenues to deal with revenue problems, we don't want to do them, but we have avenues, and having a better understanding of this is what, it costs money to do what we have to do for the population in our town, straight up. We can't expect more from the government, the Fed. I would love to expect more from the state, but that seems a little bit unclear. At the end of the day, if we want the needs met and the access that we require to not only give our students what they require, but to make us competitive with the towns around us, we have to broach that topic in some way, shape, or form. So I know I'm kind of now beating a dead horse with that one. Okay, so that was my main point there. That makes sense. The only other question is kind of out of left field, back to the West Augusta question that y'all were talking about. I would like you to draw a clearer map next time. No, I'm just kidding. It was, honestly, the question that was busting through my head, and I apologize because I'm sure you all have thought about this, was because of the West Augusta seems to be the problem child with the modulars. Sorry, horrible reference for this, or horrible. With the security concern with, of having students have to go to the bathroom and things like that, was it ever talked about of what would it cost to have a semi-permanent restroom facility or restroom access made with the modulars? Was that ever encountered?
Yeah.
Okay, I just figured I'd ask, because
we learned it with here when we did bathroom upgrades, astronomical. It blows my mind what it costs to do any sort of plumbing. But good question, thank you.
No, that was
like I like the map joke too. That was good.
Sorry, I can't.
Good.
I can be serious for more than.
They're
It was me crying on it.
thinking of that, though. They're modular
Notifying.
bathrooms.
Right.
You rent a modular bathroom.
That's kind of what I was thinking with like.
So I know, so we had to redo ours at Apple, and it
Yeah.
was truck.
I did.
It's like those wedding bathrooms, not like
nicer.
porta potties. They're not bad.
No,
And 5 foot.
renting
Just
portable,
imagine what the cost of renting.
And refilling the water,
I was just
right?
thinking, who's gonna clean it?
And the extension cord.
Yeah. It's not, they're not flushable, right?
Yeah.
No?
Yeah, they are.
Do they run?
They are.
I don't know, someone's called Target. They used them a
Yeah.
couple of years ago.
I wanna,
We had them at Apple, we had them at Apple, we had to redo all of our bathrooms.
How does the CMR regulations with the
I think
temperature
that-
of the water that we have to have and all that other stuff?
and I was laughing only because there was a couple meetings though that we spent so much time on. I think it was the athletics meeting that we spent so much time. But I think,
Oh, yeah,
Oh, yeah.
that's right.
but I think,
Well,
I think with plumbing and bathrooms, I believe it's probably a few CMRs that PRMs that would be
PPH,
affected.
yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
Acceptability.
But honestly, we're open to any ideas.
Well, I think the reason why I don't have much to say is because I'm really frustrated about the whole budget thing. And it's just, I always say like, usually I'm not at a loss for words, but I feel like when I'm quiet, that's probably when people should know that I'm unhappy about it. I just think that we need to continue to work together. I think the only way it's going to get fixed is if we continue to share advocacy opportunities at the state level, advocacy opportunities at the town level. I think Gus and Ben brought up great points about just highlighting what those numbers mean in relation to people and their experiences and what we're really losing. I think sometimes people look at a number and it's just a number, but there are people behind those numbers. There's reality behind those numbers. I'm also curious to see if any other departments got cut, or is it just education? And I don't need you to answer that for me right now, but I get concerned that with the school department, everybody does everything out of the kindness of their hearts for the kids, and that's wonderful. But at some point, people need the financial support to do their jobs and to do them well. And so if we're just over here yeah, we'll just take it, we're educators, we'll do it for the kids. At some point can't be an excuse for being taken advantage of. You can't take advantage of the kindness of educators because, they'll just do it. I mean, people are working overtime and then some to keep their classrooms going. And I am very fearful about teacher burnout. And, the only thing holding a school systems together right now are good educators. And if they get frustrated and they leave, we're absolutely screwed. I've seen it happen in other districts where they're an amazing district, but the teachers get really frustrated. A bunch of great teachers leave. It's devastating for the community. And they're really the glue that's holding this whole system together. And I'm just very fearful for education in general. And I think that we need to continue the fight, but I think that we need to do it together and continue to work as a team, because if we're upset with each other and arguing, that is going to accomplish nothing other than taking away the time that we could be using to work as a team to fight the good fight. Because I think at the end of the day, everybody wants the same thing. And I know that in tense, stressful situations, especially when it comes to finances and also matters of the heart, we have a tendency to, right? But I think everybody wants the same thing. We need to continue to share what we know with each other in an educational way that's, not aggressive, if that makes sense.
No, I think the important piece is you hit on is the relationships of, and I think the school committee administration and the union, honestly, I think that's what got us in the town. I think it's what got us through some tough times. I always joke with Rebecca that it was we have 9 units times this contract, last contract in the pandemic. So we've done 27 contracts in 5 years. And I think we've intentionally tried to build relationships because
Absolutely.
this is very difficult. And I think, the town and they've said it too, 10 years of 4% a year. And now it's like, great, not only are costs going up, one-time money's gone, but now the revenues that supported 4% a year for 10 years are declining. And that's why I said earlier that next year is going to be just as tough, if not tougher, because it's not the growth of our expenses, but now it's the decrease in revenue. And so I think that's where Ben had mentioned it too, like, where's revenue generation going to come from to support,
Right.
Weymouth, police, fire, DPW, schools. But I do feel that compared to other school districts, we're strong here. We have strong relations, we have strong unions, we have strong contracts, we've invested. So I understand you're fearful of losing staff. I think I'm just more not fearful, but I do share the same concern of the investment in education, period,
Yeah.
not just in
Yeah.
Weymouth.
I think we mirror your fear as well, especially for those that have kids in this district
Yeah.
and have kids going through schools. It's a very fearful time. I don't think anybody would disagree with you.
Yeah,
I guess I take it personally about fighting and like,
I feel like we're the best
I
that we've.
I think we've got the strongest school committee team. We all work together. We talk to each other. The administration listens, the town listens.
That's what's frustrating, because it's like,
Yeah.
And
We're
it's
working
beyond-
together, we're not going where we want to go.
It's beyond us.
we're advocating, like we always have, is advocating for education, but I mean, I pick up the phone all the time to the town council or to the mayor's office and have conversations, and everything's very friendly and cordial, and I mean, we wouldn't have these modulars if it wasn't for the town seeing that we needed them. So I think,
We mirror your frustration too,
Right.
because we're all very frustrated too.
and I sat on this board when we had massive cuts in 2008.
Yeah.
And we just held our breath, and that's what we do. You're just trying to find other creative ways.
I think the advocacy piece that,
Frustration empowers people too, right?
yeah,
It does.
yeah.
I'll just piggyback off of that. I think that not to say that it's perfect, but I would say this last budget cycle, we've done some great strides working with the community members themselves as far as communication and having an open process. This has certainly been, this is like my second budget cycle on the committee now, but this has been the most open I've seen as a resident. So I think, like I said, not to say that, work's done,
Right.
it's great. I think that we've drastically improved our communication, opening up more for the public and trying to have more transparency for everybody and making everyone more of a part of the process.
Okay.
And certainly like following through with that going forward, building that advocacy with the committee, with the public, with the parent councils. So we're all moving in the right direction.
We just sent off something that night to the senator, but saw him the other day, O'Connor, and I know he's listening to what.
And we had great conversations with them at Unified
Unified.
Campus.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think even these conversations, like, I threw out chapter 70 and circuit breaker, and Gus Fry, he brought up the millionaire's tax, and not a million. There's many avenues we can go, but I think we're all focused on working together on, a few.
Yeah.
So thank you for the comments.
thanks.
We'll take a motion to adjourn.
Move that we adjourn tonight's meeting.
Okay.
Thank you, everybody.
Nobody online.
Well, webinar.
Really? We do?